You know, in the world of software, it often feels like security and reliability teams are just stuck playing defense, right? Always reacting to the next crisis. But what if you could actually engineer your way out of that endless cycle? What if security was something that was just built in from the ground up, not slapped on at the end? Well, that's exactly the idea behind a system called CORTEX. It's all about making security proactive from the very start.
And look, if you're a security engineer or a site reliability engineer, an SRE, you're basically fighting the same war, just from different trenches. I mean, the goal is the same for both: prevent something absolutely catastrophic from happening. But the reality? Both teams are constantly forced to be reactive when they know they should be proactive. It's just this constant, exhausting battle against whatever fire pops up next.
And the cost of always being on the back foot like that? It is absolutely staggering. Just look at this number: 287 days. Let that sink in. That's the average time it takes for a company to find and deal with a data breach. That is over 9 months. 9 months where an attacker could just be hanging out in your systems, completely undetected. That right there is the price you pay for being reactive. But here's the really interesting part about this whole problem. After a major incident happens and the smoke clears, you almost always find the exact same thing. The knowledge to have prevented it, it was already there, somewhere inside the company. It might have been buried in a runbook or in some old incident report or just stuck in an engineer's head. So the real failure wasn't a lack of knowledge. It was a failure to get that knowledge to the right place at the right time.
So, okay, how does a system like Cortex even begin to tackle this? Well, it all starts with proactive, threat-aware intelligence. And the very first piece of that puzzle is something called Lens. Think of it like an early warning system that starts giving you security insights from the moment you write the very first line of code. So Lens, that actually stands for language, examination, navigation, and synthesis. But what it really is, to put it simply, is a continuous intelligence pipeline. So instead of, waiting for some big security review phase way down the line, Lens is just always on. It's always analyzing, baking security right into the act of creating stuff.
Okay, so what is Lens actually doing? Well, this pipeline is pretty cool. First off, it spots hard-coded secrets, passwords and API keys, before they even have a chance to get into your code repository. Then it's constantly scanning all your dependencies for known vulnerabilities. We call those CVEs. It also maps out the entire attack surface of your code so you know where you're exposed. And finally, it automatically generates what are called stride threat models, which is just a structured way of thinking about all the different ways someone might try to attack your system.
Now, the brains behind Lens, it all comes from this really well-curated knowledge base that covers these 6 critical areas. So this isn't just some random scanning tool guessing at things. No, this is analysis that's powered by real industry-standard best practices. Stuff like the OWASP Top 10, proven secure coding patterns, and solid threat modeling techniques.
Okay, so once you have all this great intelligence, you need a way to actually use it, right? You need a structure. And that's where the next part of Cortex comes in, the 5-layer defense tower. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's about building these concentric walls of security to protect the entire software development lifecycle, the whole SDLC.
And this really gets at a fundamental question. For decades, right, security has been this big gate at the very end of the line. It's that last, often painful check you have to do right before you release. But think about it. What happens when you find a huge vulnerability at that stage? You got to go all the way back to the beginning. So the big question is, how do you move that security check earlier? How do you shift left?
Well, Cortex does it with these 5 distinct layers. Layer 1 starts right on the developer's laptop with pre-commit hooks catching stuff before the code is even shared. Next, you've got automated CI security gates that scan every single pull request. Then there's runtime governance, which enforces rules while the code is actually running. After that, deployment validation basically puts a seal of approval on the final product before it goes out. And finally, continuous monitoring keeps an eye on everything after release to make sure nothing changes or drifts out of compliance.
So the whole point of this layered model, the crucial takeaway, is this: threats get caught at the earliest, cheapest, and safest point possible. The ultimate goal here is to make sure a vulnerability never, ever even makes it into production in the first place.
All right, the final piece of this whole architecture is the glue that holds it all together: governance as infrastructure. And what this really means is turning all those rules and compliance policies into automated, enforceable code. It's about making traceability the default, not an afterthought.
And we're talking about real enforcement here. CORTEX enforces over 60 of these governance rules across the entire platform. And it's not just a flat list of rules. Security rules are put in the absolute strictest, most unforgiving tier. So if a high-severity security violation pops up, there's no negotiation. The whole process just stops, dead in its tracks, until it's fixed.
And the payoff for having all this automated governance, it is huge. I mean, just think about preparing for an audit. This quote really says it all, because every single action is automatically logged with a timestamp and what rule was enforced. You can generate an audit trail in seconds. It goes from being a multi-week, all-hands-on-deck fire drill to a simple query that takes, well, seconds.
And that right there is the real-world impact. So instead of pulling your best engineers away from their actual jobs for weeks to do stressful, manual audit prep, you get reporting you can be confident in, and you get it in seconds. It lets your most talented people focus on building cool new things, not digging through old logs. So when you put all these pieces together, the proactive intelligence from Lens, the layered defense tower, and the automated governance, you get this really profound transformation. Security stops being that bottleneck that everyone complains about, the thing that slows everyone down. Instead, it actually becomes an accelerator for the business.
And this is what the new reality looks like. When security is engineered in from the start, every single commit carries with it cryptographic proof that it's been validated. Every deployment that goes to production carries the confidence that it passed through all those layers of automated defense. Suddenly, speed and safety aren't fighting each other anymore. They're partners.
There's this old saying in the SRE world that just perfectly captures the philosophy here. Hope is not a strategy. And it's so true, right? Hoping you don't have a security breach isn't a strategy. Hoping your system stays up isn't a strategy. Real security, just like real reliability, has to be engineered. It has to be built on purpose.
So, I want to leave you with this question to think about. What new features could you build? What incredible innovations could you launch if you weren't constantly being held back by fear? What would you ship if every single one of your deployments carried undeniable proof of its integrity?